you having a chocolate milk break. Welcome to video number 4. This is a Unify video covering layers. There's 4 different layers in Unify. I want to make sure you know all about them because they're pretty cool. And different from each other in color, as well as in what they can do. So, to start with, when you hit init, you have a single layer that is an instrument layer. Let's do this. Let's swap this out with a piano sound. So we go down here to replace this layer to Guru Sampler. These are all presets, and I've made presets for each of the synths inside of Unify. And if you're up here, when you say plus layer, you have option to go to these presets. But by doing this from here, I'm gonna add another layer. So we have 2 op buttons for layers. There's actually one on layers itself, which lets you go to replace the layers area. And here I can go Guru Sampler, replace this layer with the piano. And now, that way I can get something loaded into a layer to start with quickly instead of starting from scratch every time. They're very handy for that. And I'm gonna say, give me one more layer, and let's have this one be from Guru. No, let's go for DX'd, and let's say keyboard bank 1. What's cool with the DX'd banks and unique to it that the other ones don't do is it actually saves an entire cart of 32 patches. A DX7 used to have these cartridges that could hold 32 patches at a time. I went to the introduction of the DX7 here in Portland, Oregon, actually, where I live now. It's pretty funny to think back on that time. But I can go here and, right? Okay, so let's use that sound because it can show you some really cool features that we've put into the layer for instruments. So if we go to the DX layer in particular, we want to mute the piano. We want to, you could either mute or you could hit solo. Either way. One of the cool features that we put into every layer is the ability to go to this velocity curve and modify it. And the DX definitely needs. Now you can get to those nice soft tones that you can't get to. Even if you play super soft, it's really hard. So the velocity curve, this is MIDI input velocity curve, meaning the notes that are sent to Unify, that number gets looked at to this curve and modified. So it can offset the curves to be. Now when I put this with the piano, it's gonna sound much nicer. And you'll notice this layer, it's an octave too low. So over here we have a set of parameters, and this one right here is transpose. And you can click and drag up, or you can click with the Option key held down and drag up once, and it will jump an octave. And it'll jump an octave all the way up to plus 48 or minus 48. So using the Option or the Alt key lets you get to a nice piano layer. Now, these are insert effects, so I'm gonna go over here and click to the modulation, our silky chorus. Slow it down. Nice. And let's say maybe I wanna put, I want reverb. Well, this would be a nice case to use auxiliary buses because I want one effect that they all can share. So, go over here to add auxiliary effects, and here we have presets. Here's reverb. Let's just say like a huge water room. And cool, huh? Now, that's a little bit too long. We'll edit that in a second, but I want to show you the difference. If I was to go over here and say add that reverb, which is called water verb, make it nice and long. Brighten this a little bit shorter. So now you only hear it on the piano. And the other thing that's kind of a bummer with insert effects when it comes to things that ring out like delays and reverbs is that this mix is actually changing. It makes the reverb totally go away immediately. That's where auxiliary buses really come in handy. So I'm gonna click the ops. I'm gonna say operations. As you can see, we can delete, we can bypass. Let's say delete, and now enable it here. And now check this out so that I can have it so that doesn't go away when I change the send. This right here, number 1 is the send to auxiliary bus number 1. Let's double click to name this layer. This is the DX electric piano. All right, because I'm going to go into the knobs real quick. I'm going to right click, or I'm going to just click it, either option, and say linked parameters. And let's add from each of these instruments, and see where I named them. I named this DX electric piano so that I could have access to auxiliary send. So I want it to start with just a little bit, and then as I move the mod wheel, I want it to increase the amount of reverb on my mod wheel. And I actually do this to both, and I can go to the auxiliary send. You can get to every parameter of every plugin and assign them to the knobs, which is crazy. So I now have, let's say we will start, right there's our minimum, right here's our max. I'm gonna change the curve. This kind of curve with mod wheels and controllers is great. It just goes a little bit, it has a nice feel to it. So, see right here, when I move my mod wheel, these two knobs change. So I can, it sounds nice. It needs to be a fuller sound. That's where Master Effects come in really handy. And it just so happens, under this little bullet, you can get to these layer presets. And I've only made a couple, because this one right here, the optimizer, the top one is just compressor and limiter, but the bottom one is compressor, limiter, and EQ. And let's do that slow motion. Check out the difference in sounds. Let's go over here, say init this layer. Now I'm going to add it while it's playing. Hear that? So it gave it a little bit more body because there's a little EQ for the low end and the high end. The compressor added 2.5 dB, and just it's very soft. If you want to get more of a compressed sound, just bring down the threshold. Maybe make it snappier. Have it slapper a little harder. Have it preset. It's just kind of sitting there giving a little bit of a level boost. And finally, loud max. And if nothing else, I would suggest putting loud max on everything at the output stage. It protects the output from distorting, which is really important. Because it's very easy to get levels to be too loud, something like that. And if this goes over 0 dB, you do hear some distortion from the way that you can distort Logic, you can distort Omnisphere, you can distort all sorts of things. So this protects it so it doesn't distort. So add loud max, if nothing else, right here to the master effects. Okay. At this point, we have a nice sound. We can add reverb. There's one more layer effect, and I'm going to go over here to add an empty MIDI effect just to talk about this for a second. Oh, I should also do this. Before we hook this up, when you add a MIDI effect, it's not hooked up until you go to this little choice right here and you select MIDI effect. We haven't done that yet. So we're just looking at these two layers. I want to also point out, you can choose to be different MIDI channels for each layer. So I can have one on MIDI channel 1, one on MIDI channel 2. I think over in Logic, I'm only sending on 1. And if I go to Logic and I change it to be 2, so you can make one Unify a 16-part multi-timbral module, really easy. In fact, down here in the templates, I have created right here 4, 8, and 16 MIDI channel templates. You click that, boom, everything is set up for multi-channel use. So you have those templates to start with. There's also, as you can see, templates for layers, 1 or like 2 layers, 3 layers. We can also do velocity switching and splits. So there's a split for 1 layer, meaning there's like 1 layer in the left hand, 1 in the right hand, or 2 layers, 2 in the left hand, 2 in the right hand, and then 2 and 3-way velocity switching, which we'll do stuff like, let's do this. If we wanted to split this, so hey, MIDI channels, let's go back to all. Now below this, it says NC, no change. You can reroute incoming MIDI to another MIDI channel if you so desire. That's more for future use, things that we have planned to add in the future to Unify. So to the right of that are your key ranges. And by bringing this, in fact, if you right click, you can play, let's say A. And if I go to both of these and I right click and say A, I have now limited my keyboard so that when I play A sharp, there's no more sound. So I could take one of these, I could say, no, go to the top of the range, and the bottom note will be C. So now I need a split piano. Now realize you can do this with all of your plugins, meaning everything in this list can be loaded. If I go to all instruments, all of these can be loaded into any of these slots to be made into splits and layers like in instance. So all of the synthesizers that you own, that you've always wished you could split and layer, you can now split and layer. And the way that Unify works in multiprocessor, it's grabbing a processor per layer. So you can keep, actually it's grabbing a thread, because there's many of these processors these days create more than one thread from one processor. So it's grabbing a thread. Okay. So as well as the velocity range, we also have the velocity note range. And what that allows you to do is make velocity switches. So I'm going to have this when I play soft, it plays piano until I hit over a velocity of 94. And then this one here, the bottom is going to be set to 95. You can right click and then type 95 and hit return and it's in. What this means is when I play soft, and let's do this. Let's make this a little bit higher. So let's say like about 105. That means the next step after 105 is 106. And let's put a ton of reverb on this so that now it's too loud, so turn it down. You could even keep the piano playing the whole range. So you can do all sorts of cool things like that. Velocity calling in a different synth sound, calling in a sample, or all sorts of things. Each layer has its own range. So that means that they can be independent from each other. There's really cool tricks with the arpeggiator. In a minute, I'll show you how you can hook this up to like 3 different sounds, right? Let's do this. Let's go to where we have it play the whole range. And let's get this MIDI effect into play. So I'm going to click right here on the ops for the MIDI effect layer. And right here we can go to replace. I'm going to go, let's see, notes and chords together is really nice. Now, when I play, you don't hear it because we haven't hooked it up to anything. It's just sitting there. It's this effect sitting in the corner, just hanging out. All you need to do to change that is click right here. And you have both trigger modes of latch. And what latch means is mono latch. Let's do this. Both of these go to mono latch. So I can show you together. Turn on the little latch button. And now when I play notes, it's just one note. It's mono. And it'll hold it forever. So you can play chord drones and have it so it holds it forever on a certain note. When you play another note, it'll play another. And then when you want it to stop, you just play that note again. Or you turn off the latch up here. And I think we're going to put a trigger in at some point so you can do that with a key command or with something on the screen. We haven't added that yet. But so you have 2 latch modes. The other latch mode is polyphonic, which means that you can play a chord or as many notes as you want. And it stays forever until you play new notes. Which gets a little bit tricky if you're playing different notes and you don't remember what notes you played. You want to turn it off. So that's there. But below that, so raw means just raw MIDI coming in, all information. Below that is the first MIDI effect, MIDI 1. So it's like MIDI 1 for both of these. And So this is using Blue ARP, which is the ARP that we received permission to include inside of Unify. And it's a really wonderful starting arpeggiator with a lot of capabilities. You've got velocity control here. You've got the gate time. So we could say, have that be 2 times and have these guys be shorter. Have that last one be really short. And you have velocity. So let's have soft velocity, medium, really hard velocity. 112. So by doing this, I can do all sorts of crazy things now. I could say the piano only will play once you hit a velocity of 112. And you could go to the DX part and you could turn down velocity controls if you wanted to. You could also do velocity right here just by going like this. You can limit the range so it doesn't go to the highest notes and it gets there sooner. So you can do all sorts of crazy things with the arpeggiator. And on top of that, we have unlimited arpeggiators. So this one MIDI effect is talking to these two. Let's add another Guru sampler, or actually let's use OBX. Let's use like the jump synth, which gives me just a nice... And it's automatically going through the auxiliary bus. So let's turn it off. So let's go to this guy here and let's say we bring down. It'd be nice if this is playing on a different ARP. So let's go over here and say MIDI effects. Let's add a new MIDI effect and automatically connect it to beat to the chords together. But this is called the OBX ARP. And let's call this one the piano and EP ARP. So I know the difference between the two. Because now when I click on the N, you see I have the names of that right here. So I just say OBX ARP. And then I can go to the timing and I could go to here and I could say quarter notes, or I could go to the patterns here and say play with the patterns. And they have a list right here so you can go through all of them and say we want a chord. Where's the chord one? Here we go. So let's turn down a volume, take it up an octave. And let's go to OBXD and make it a different sound. And then maybe we want to go, oh, maybe that's not the right timing. So you could go here and say, let's say eighth notes. And maybe we want to solo those for a second. Let's have it do octaves. Let's try that. Let's have this go through an insert effect version of a delay and sync. And let's have it add chorus to it. And then I want to warm it up. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add from the Unify effects in EQ. We have the MDA loudness. Just makes it bigger, rounder. So you can see how you can have multiple. Let's do this. This will be really cool. So I'm hearing something. So. be a nice place to start. Let's go to these knobs and let's go to the linked parameters and add from OBXD, the plugin. Let's go down here and look through the effect list. Here's cutoff. Here's filter envelope amount. Perfect. And as you can see, there's a line across that shows what it's currently set at. And then we can use this to modify it. So as I play, so the auxiliary buses for the first two are still happening. To add reverb to it. And I also want to go over here to instrument, OBXD, filter cutoff, and just add a little filter cutoff, not a lot. So. And then as it goes up, I want it also to go into the auxiliary bus. So you go to the instrument, to the auxiliary send, and here it is. And so now we can add that jump synth into the reverb. Oh. So one thing about OBXD is that it adds pitch LFO. If we solo it, you'll hear. It just so happens that they have a really cool thing where the vibrato rate. By the way, if you don't have this skin, go to skins and it's right here. It's the skin I made for OBXD for the release of Unify called Classic OBXD Guru Classic. And so that gives you this cool interface. But right here where it says vibrato rate, just bring this down to 0 and no more vibrato to the LFO. So now when we play this, I want to get brighter. So go to LinkedIn parameters, cut off. I want it brighter and I want it to get a little sooner. Yeah. And I want to, because we're having fun, let's go Unify modulation, add a chorus. But I want this at the very beginning and I want its mix to be down. Then we go to link parameters and we can say add from instrument, OBXD to the effects. I move chorus to the front, there it is. Wet dry mix, it's currently at 0. So now as I bring it up, it's gonna add chorus. Sweet. Now filter cutoff, it's a little bit too strong, a little bit too soon, so let's change the curve. Yeah, I want it to go like from there. You can control the shape of how the mod wheel or whatever slider you want to use. You can change the curvature of that control source. It's so fun to play with. And on top of that, if you want to get crazy, you can double click to add multiple segments. So you can have like, let's see, this is our envelope amount. So if we go to, let's see, if we go over here and we call it up, you should actually see this move because we actually are moving the parameters. Watch this, the envelope amount, it goes boom, boom, bound, back to the bottom. And if I go here, I can show you the keyboard so you can see what's happening. As I move this up, halfway through the stage, it goes back down to 0. So that's because of me setting this up like this. I can double click to delete those. And now it's back to just being a nice gradual increase. So we have access to all of the parameters of all your synthesizers inside of Unify. So you can do stuff like this. So that's layers. So we got 4 layers going. We got the master for the sweetening at the end, auxiliary buses for being there when we want them and then they can go away. But the reverb keeps going because the volume of the bus is still left up. Just the send amount that's going to the bus is what we're changing. And we're changing parameters in the synths. And we've had fun with MIDI effects. And if I want more MIDI effects, I can just say, add another MIDI effect. Boom, there it is. Add another layer, connect it, boom. All of a sudden you have 6 MIDI effects and lots of layers going on. Hold down Option, click, and you can delete things. This I want to save, so I'm going to actually save this. So I'll call this BPM KEY. Kind of reminds me of PingPong Pianos. And we'll put this into, now what you name the library. is the name of the folder it will either make or it will put the sounds into. And the category, this is BPM and keyboard. And for tags, let's call this BPM piano. There's this grand, there's this Steinway church piano. There's DX'd. There's tutorial, because this came in the tutorial video. So if you want to search for this, you'll be able to find it, because I'll keep that tag. And that's it for, I guess, and synth. Actually, we should go up here to BPM keyboard and synth, because all of those are present. And John Limcool is a programmer, and I can type comments made while making the video owner's manual. And I'll add more details to it. So go save as new. It pops up the standard save window, which is usually going to look like this. Make sure you hit the little checkbox right here so it makes it a nice full, so you can change directories and all sorts of stuff. And then you can resize this by clicking and dragging. And let's make that like that and hit save, and it saves it. So it's now in the list with everything else. So, all right, so that's 4 layers. That's how they work. I probably went a little deeper, but that way I could show you them in actual application, which I think is helpful. Next up, we're going to look at all the plugins that come inside of Unify, which are really exciting. So, see ya.